With the announcement of a sequel series, I wanted to talk about why Desperate Housewives was so iconic. I'm of two minds about this because obviously we live in like the era of constant reboots. I'm surprised that it hasn't happened earlier. The show ended in 2012, it started in 2004, it ran for hundreds of episodes and was just one of the most iconic shows of all time, honestly. But like a lot of people don't understand why it was so good and why it was so special and why so many people have such fond memories of it. The premise of Desperate Housewives is very simple, right? It was five women who live on a street who were all sort of thrown into chaos after their friend unalives herself. It was deep, it was funny, it was campy, it was like satirical. It just hit all of these notes. And I think there is something very specific about the fact that it was written by a gay man who really understood like camp, right? Like there were so many storylines on this show that were absolutely ridiculous that were performed like it was Shakespeare, and you just had to literally ride the wave of like, okay, there's a tornado, there's a fire, you just had to take it at face value. Another reason that the show was so iconic is that each one of the women was extremely complicated, extremely flawed, and extremely complex, right? Like they were all representing different versions of femininity and motherhood while also like chafing against the very strict expectations that were placed upon them by their gender and society, right? In the aughts, there was not this rise of like, there are so many different ways to be a woman. You can do whatever you want. You can have it all, right? The girl boss era existed in 2016, 4 years after the show ended, right? For a lot of women growing up in this era, or like women who were of their age, right? Because they were in their, like Gabrielle was 30-ish when the show started. Everyone else was in their 40s, right? So they were from a very different generation, even when I was a kid, because I was very young when this show started. Going left to right, Edie was a character who really chafed against like sexual mores, right? She was like, I could do whatever I want. Like, who are you to judge me? But everyone did judge her, right? She was very difficult to integrate into the group because people were still very, very moralistic and were like, she is inappropriate and we don't want her around, right? Brie was very like Republican, Southern coded. I have to be perfect, the perfect homemaker, the perfect wife. And her arc is incredible to watch over the 8 seasons as she sort of breaks free of this and realizes that she is trapped within this very, very specific confines of like what she thought she had to be. Susan is overhated by the fandom. I hate her too, but like Susan is overhated by the fandom because she is a bad mom, right? And in a way, you can actually argue that all four of the main characters were bad moms in individual ways, right? Like Susan fell apart after her husband cheated on her and her daughter was extremely parentified, right? They had no boundaries in their relationship. There was always this weird enmeshment of their relationship, right? Brie rigidly controlled all of her children. Lynette hated being a mom, famously, right? Her whole storyline was like, I hate my kids, I want to go back to work. And like the show was very, very explicit about that. And then it was iconic because that was something that wasn't said out loud, right? It was a sentiment that perhaps many women had. And like we see a lot of it now. I've talked a lot about the rise of like the millennial motherhood novel, where a lot of women are writing books about like, I hate being at home with my kid and it fucking sucks, but like obviously I love my kid. And that was a tension that was really, really, really explored with Lynette's storyline. And Gabrielle, when she eventually became a mother in season 5, you see the tension again of like, my kid ruined my body. I don't necessarily get along with them. They're so different than what I expected them to be. I don't understand why my kid isn't exactly like me. And it again was very realistic and very like heartbreaking to watch. Gabrielle's later season arcs are some of the most beautiful and some of the most heartbreaking. But anyway, Susan was messy. Susan was a bad mom, and she always put her relationships before her daughter. And it was interesting to watch because it was like, you do not care what happens to this kid. Like, you are so lucky that Julie is like a go-getter and ambitious and an achiever, because she is all of those things despite you, not because of you. Whereas Lynette, again, I already talked about her arc being about motherhood and the corporate world. Lynette was also saddled with like a nice guy husband who seemed very good compared to the other husbands on the show, but then revealed himself to be an absolute piece of work. They stayed together, but like a lot of it was very stressful to watch because Tom fucking sucks. Another thing that I wanted to say about Gabrielle is that people were very, very hard on her in the first season, not in the culture, but like now I see on Reddit when people are rewatching the show or watching it for the first time, they're applying a like 2025 morality to it, where her first season storyline is that she's sleeping with like the 16-year-old gardener. And obviously I'm not condoning like SA or CSA or anything like that. But I do think that it was meant to be provocative. It was meant to be crazy, right? Like if you watch shows from this era, Will and Grace, Friends, right? All of these shows have a very, very different moral compass applied. And if you're watching it with like 2025, like I'm going to cancel everyone who ever worked on this, you're not going to get it and you're not going to enjoy it, because again, this like obsession with morality and obsession with policing other people's behavior is preventing you from like enjoying the full spectrum of the human experience. I might have to do a part two because this already got long and I still want to talk about Catherine and Vanessa Williams' character. So I will revisit because I was also thinking about doing a ranking of my favorite episodes of the show, but I'll be back.